Now, the veterinary service says it has intensified its sensitization exercise across the country following the outbreak of the H5 strand of avian influenza virus, also known as bird flu. Already, the service has recorded nearly 10,000 birds, or have killed already 10,000 birds. Speaking in an exclusive interview with JoyNews, Head of Public Health and Food Safety at the Veterinary Department, Dr. Bashiru Boy Kikimoto, said farmers must observe strict monitoring of both human and animal movement on their farms.
We have been collaborating with the Ghana Poultry Farmers Association, and we always let them know that biosecurity and biosafety is the best way to do. Because these are viruses, and these diseases, they don't, because it's airborne, there's nothing you can do. So the best thing is to make sure that you have a biosecurity pit in front of your gate. You dig, you put disinfectants inside, and then you put maybe cocoa sack. So anybody come inside will step on it before entering the farm. So that is virucidal, so it kills the virus. So once you do all those things, and you also make sure that the rooms are also well protected from birds carrying other things from other areas and coming there. So once you increase the biosafety and biosecurity measures on your farm, and you also make sure that your people don't visit other people's farms by heart, the likelihood is that you won't get the outbreak. Because, you know, we used to have cider farms in Tema, Ashaman. And we had other farms who were also in Tema, and they were not far from cider farms. But cider farms tried not to allow people to come to the farm by heart. So sometimes there's regulation. So once you regulate people, there's a likelihood that you will not get the interest. The method that we use are OIE or international standard methods. So there's nothing so much different as such, apart from that. Normally, you see other countries like Nigeria and Egypt, they use vaccination. We don't want to vaccinate because we know that this virus, it changes very fast. So once you vaccinate, maybe you can change it to be so fatal to human beings. That's why people are dying in Nigeria and Egypt, but no Ghanaian has died yet from bird flu. So we decided to use the Japanese style. It comes, we go in like fire service, quench it, protect the place, and then we leave the place fallow. And we think that's the best way to continue doing it. Instead of vaccinating. Yeah. We don't want to risk. Nigeria, the risk, people are dying. Egypt, people are dying. You know, normally it's a molecular aspect. It takes time. You have to isolate the gene first. After isolating the gene, then you go through some processes, and then to be able to identify the specific one. So normally it takes some time to do that. That's why at least about 3 days.
So I guess we can wait
yes,
for
we can. Yes, the next 1-2 days we will let you know the outcome. But we have put quarantine to regulate the place.
Meanwhile, the service says the alleged 11,000 birds that have been killed by the H5 avian influenza in the Ashanti and Eastern region could have been inflated. Dr. Kikimoto says the figures could not have been accurate as many farmers lack proper farm records.
From the latest statistical analysis of the number of births and deaths, we have realized that the 11,000 was on the higher side, in the sense that the farmers gave figures before veterinary came there. We have to ask you questions about the whole farm. So they will give you figures that they had. And if they don't have proper documentation, you have to take their books and see the total stock and those things. But they will tell you how many died that were not in. So you have to add all those ones into the one that you came and met. And that's why sometimes the figures, there's plus, minus. Yeah.
So there's a likelihood that the figures might be less.
They might be less, or they might even be more. That is because most of the farmers sometimes don't like disclosing the total. So if you get very well organized farms, for them they have the documentation, there's nothing that, because whenever there's a mortality today, you write today, 4th, 2 died. Tomorrow, that kind of thing, or yesterday, 2 died, that kind of thing. So that one, when you take the book, the veterinary, we don't even need their concern or assistant, because everything is written in the book. But it's not all farmers that have proper documentation. You see, the problem is that it's not the cooked one that you get the disease. It's before you cook it. So it is during the preparation
Okay.
And then you get it. But you think that, you know, there's nothing. But you cook and eat, but later the disease will start showing.
Okay.
So during the removal of the feathers, you know, the cutting, that period. But once you put it inside the water and cook and eat, you won't get it.
You won't get it.
Because the virus dies 70 degrees, 3 minutes time is dead. Every government comes with its policy. So previously, there was outbreak, and some farmers were compensated because government thought that it didn't want the poultry industry to collapse. So farmers are thinking that maybe every government that comes, when there's an outbreak, they may get compensation. It's likely not to be like that. You are doing your own business. Make sure you protect your business properly by improving the biosecurity and biosafety. If government starts to intervene, it's a plus to you. Yeah, that's my advice.
Dr. Boy Kikimoto there. Joining me on the phone line now is Napoleon Ajimayodro, who is the Vice Chairman of the Ghana Poultry Farmers Association. Sir, thank you very much for your time. First of all, let me find out from you what measures your farmers are taking to minimize the spread of the outbreak.
Good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. Good afternoon, Dr. Kikimoto. We are very grateful for every effort you're putting in here to stop the spread of the disease. Your question, as soon as we hear the announcement of bird flu in the country, we get to all our regional executives, and they also are advised to get to district executives. So we do have the network to reach our members all over the country to ask farmers to be extra careful. At this moment, we ask farmers not to admit visitors in the poultry side. They will have to be very careful with buyers of poultry products. You need to know where to position them so that in case any of them is a carrier, he can't easily have access to the inner portion of the site. Vehicles that are coming to our site, we need to be extra careful with them if possible. They need to go through the disinfectant that is at the entrance of the fence wall, or workers that are coming into, we advise that when they come, they have to completely change. Shoes that are worn from houses shouldn't be sent into the coop. If possible, the clothes that they wear to work must be changed for what they usually will use at the site. So these are the measures we have put in place. Since yesterday in the morning that we read from the Daily Graphic, and also we listened to Dr. Kikimoto, an interview granted in Accra, we based on that and sent a message through our network, and as we speak now, we're quite sure that our regional and district executive members are quite aware of this.
We're told that over 11,000 birds have been affected, and some of your members have complained to the veterinary service that you've have to destroy about 11,000, over 11,000 birds. The veterinary service doesn't believe that this is possible.
Well, the figures weren't given by farmers in the Daily Graphic. In the interview that Kikimoto granted, it wasn't a speech of a poultry farmer. They gave the figures. How did they come by these figures from the poultry farmer? I mean, you have several coops in the poultry house, and each coop contains so much. So even if I'm lying, you can easily do a simple calculation of the size of the coop and determine how many birds we should have in here. So I'm not agreeing with him that the poultry farmer gave figures that might not be right. I mean, somebody with over 10,000 stocks, definitely the records will show. And we are doing our own separate investigation. We see how he's been record and all that to arrive at the figure we saw. But in the meantime, once they have given it to JoyNews or Daily Graphic as the figures they receive from them, we have accepted to work with it until we finish with our own investigation.
And one of the things that he says also is that well, sometimes these figures are sort of inflated because some of these poultry farmers know that there is some sort of compensation that come with some of these outbreaks, and that the figures are inflated for compensation purposes?
Well, he can say that. I mean, if you undertake an insurance policy, assuming you are a provision store retailer, and there's a fire outbreak, your insurance company will ask you questions. Once you tell them ABC and they put it together and they think that is right, they go ahead and compensate you.
Right.
So a farmer, as he said, can do that, but there is the need for an audit. There is a need to really, when did you take your day-old proof records of your receipt and all that, your medication, the last time veterinary officer visited, all confirming that the figures that you are giving are right. The fact that I quote, say, 11,000 or 10,000 at my farm is not to say that I'm guaranteed for compensation. There is a need for audit. That must be carried, that indeed. And when we went to destroy, sometimes we really want to justify what we have destroyed, what we have seen. In the past, you can't easily accept that, yes, I had 11,000 and say 2,000 died before you came. What were you doing when the 2,000 were dying? So for our own sake, for our own benefit, you need to be very frequent at the veterinary office. The portion that I heard that he said, it is up to the government to decide to pay compensation or not. That, I think, we need to revisit that, because sometimes bird flu, doctor knows that we don't have vaccine for that. And diseases that have vaccines, poultry farmers will not hesitate. They will go for vaccines. Bird flu is like a disaster. So when it happens, if government decides to pay compensation, it's like NADMO responding to a disaster or flood situation in any part of the country.
Speaking of compensations, in 2016 there was a similar outbreak, and we understood that government gave you some compensations, your members.
That we thank Parliament so much for approving 11 million cedis for handling the bird flu in 2016. The component that was supposed to go for farmer compensation was about 2.8 or about 3 million cedis. Unfortunately, not all the farmers received their compensation.
How many received and how many did not?
As we talk now, about 3 million, about 1.1 million is not paid yet.
No, how many of your members did not receive the compensation?
There were about 28.
28 of them did not receive their compensation?
Yes.
Were they told why?
Well, we found out from the veterinary, and we're told that the money as approved, not all of them were received. And for that matter, the first tranche that came, they paid some farmers. And they were waiting to receive the next tranche, and unfortunately, it didn't come. We have sent a petition to the Minister in charge of Minister of State in charge of Livestock regarding these farmers whose livelihood has been displaced for the last couple of years, almost about 2 years. They haven't received, they are out of business. And that is a worry to us and to them as farmers. And this one has come up. So
who was responsible for the disbursements of the money again? The Ministry of Agriculture?
Ministry of Agriculture through Veterinary Service Directorate.
But the 28 did not receive the money from the Directorate.
Come again?
But the 28 of your members did not receive the compensation from the Directorate.
Yes. The quantified amount is about 1.1 million. Okay. Couldn't come as the compensation for the farmers. And it's still not over yet. We have sent a petition to the Minister of State in charge of Livestock. So we still are hoping that we will be called to receive the compensation. And unfortunately, this one has okay. And as part of our communication to our membership in the regions and districts, we should be in a position to tell whether they will receive compensation or not. In any case, whether a farmer receives compensations or not, you will have to allow your birds to be killed, because we would not want to say that you not surrender because you're not going to get compensation. Otherwise, the whole region, the whole district, the whole nation will be wiped out by bird flu. So we still will advise, whilst the poultry executives will have to negotiate with the government for such consideration for packages, we want to advise all our members that the slightest thing you see on a farm that or the slightest suspicion, rush the nearest veterinary clinic or hospital and let us start to work on that, so that we will help solve.
Ms. Ajmai, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Napoleon Ajmayoduro is the vice chair of the Ghana Poultry Farmers Association. They're helping us with some information. About 28 of their members, they say, did not receive the compensation that was due them following the 2016 outbreak. In the meantime, he says that the veterinary services could go on and conduct the investigations if they think that the numbers given them by the poultry farmers are not accurate.